So we don't need to be adversarial all the time. And I find that even in Ireland, the ministers complaining, you never give us credit for anything. In fact, they were so fed up with us that they thought they wouldn't bother with this 0.7% because they thought we won't get any credit for it, so why would we do it? So, you know, to be clever about how we engage, and not always to focus at the national level, but go to the local authorities, provincial, district authorities, where there can be much more space available, where people know each other and where there are opportunities to begin to build. The building of vertical alliances right up to the international level. And we do this, but we can do it more and more. Where issues are really critical, to bring it to the international level in the media, on television, reports that can be launched that highlight these things, put them on the agenda of parliamentary committees, bring them to the major international institutions, the UN, the EU, and so on. All of that can help build this agenda. But using evidence-based research. This should not be academic stuff. It should not be people sitting in think tanks and in universities, or even in the policy departments of NGOs coming up with policy documents and with positions. Bring the message from the ground to the centres of power. And more, bring the people from the ground to the centres of power. And let them speak their own story to those who can listen and can do something about it. And provide legal analysis and support. Fight fire with fire. If this is the way laws are going to be put together, we must be clever and respond accordingly, and not just feel that we can sort of just rail against it. We need expertise. So there are many challenges in this for ourselves also. I mean, this might be a subversive agenda, but it could subvert the way our NGOs have been working for years. And I'm thinking particularly of the international NGOs, which I represent one, and about whom I suppose I can speak more authoritatively than trying to speak in a broad sense. Because I know many NGOs who are nervous of this agenda, who are quite happy to accept large funding from governments to do good technical service delivery programs, who will invest in agriculture and in hydrology, in irrigation, to try and counter food shortages, but who will run a mile from the idea of dealing with access to land for peasants as a way of countering hunger. So we have many in our community dependent on government funding, so that we begin to adjust our policies to ensure that we continue to get it. And again, we come back to the service versus advocacy agenda. And is it going to be one or the other? We have done another report from Trócaire called the Leading Edge Report, which will be workshopped tomorrow afternoon, and I hope some of you will come. But it calls out some key challenges for international NGOs as we move to Busan and beyond. Key ones like downward accountability. It's very easy to talk about downward accountability, but it's not very easy to do it, particularly when the whole accountability structure has for years been the other way up. Everyone reporting to the level above about what they did with the money, and the people at the bottom never asked their views on anything. This is a real challenge for NGOs. And the donors are right to criticize us for this. Whom do we really represent? Are we really based in grassroots? Are we really listening to the people that we support? And are we really accountable to them? Or have we too become a sort of an elite doing our thing, but just in a different context? This is a real challenge, and one which we need to face together. And the building of southern civil society for the northern NGOs is also a challenge, because there is a handover of power. The days of the almighty European NGOs running around doing their food relief and all that, it's all over. We know that. This is what this process is about. But the penny hasn't dropped in the boardrooms of many NGOs in the northern countries. Are we really prepared to work with our southern partners now about real capacity building? And when we talk about the people, the beneficiaries that have been involved in the planning of their projects that the donors are supporting, are we prepared to have it done to ourselves? How many of our programs are dreamt up in boardrooms in headquarters and simply applied across Africa and Asia because this is the way we do things? This is our approach, this is our charism, we do this. That is a real challenge for us. And also to engage in our own societies. For too long there's been this kind of sense of, well, we're great, you know, we work with the poor, people give us money and we go out and do things. People say, aren't you wonderful? That day is over too. First of all, the media have brought the reality home. People are sitting in their houses now looking at things and saying, oh, what are our organisations doing about that? More accountability to our own supporters is vital. Not only that we retain the legitimacy to say we have the support of our own civil society, but also to build in the northern countries a constituency that is dedicated to global justice and to development aid. Because all that has happened in the last 5 years in the economy and related things means this is really under threat. And is our voice being heard loud enough? And I can tell you in Ireland, where we've just undergone a genuine third world experience, structural adjustment, whoever thought it would come to the European Union, but there you are, 3 of us are now structurally adjusted by the IMF. And we now know what you people felt like 10 years ago. But now the question is, how can we afford to give all this money away when there's so much to do here at home? We're borrowing money to give it away. This is crazy. And more, this agenda is going to be developed in the northern countries. And are we prepared to take it on? Or are we taking too much for granted? So those are some of the issues that are out there, which I hope might help to stimulate some of the thinking in the workshops and so on in the coming 2 days. But I think we need to remember, just to conclude, that since this process started, with Paris and then Accra, the world is now a very different place. This is not the world of the late last decade. And there is evidence that the donor countries are already tiring of this agenda. That Busan for them is going to be the end of this process. It's been going on for years now. You know, it's time just to wrap it up and move on. Move on to what? Well, one of the big realities that is now on the scene are the BRICS, and particularly China. And we hear in the corridors and in meeting rooms in Brussels and elsewhere, things like, well, you know, if China is getting a foothold and buying up the land and getting the resources, we need to be in there with them. And our new policy coming out of the European Union, the white paper that will soon be published, has economic growth at the heart of the policy, a real shift, and a sense that this business of untied aid, which was signed up to in MDG 8, why would you do that? Sure, look at the Chinese are buying up land and they're buying up forests and everything, and you know, and here we are with this agenda. I'm telling you, there are real questions being asked. And it's not the aid ministries I'm talking about. The aid ministries are fine. They're kind of like us, you know, they're into this. It's the other colleagues around the cabinet table who are looking at these aid budgets and looking at what's going on and saying, what are we at? And that is a real reality in my country, and I know it to be in several others as well. And our falling aid budgets indicate where the priorities really lie. So there are real challenges ahead for us, but I believe that this process, which started out pre-Accra and has been carried on over the last 3 years, has been brilliant for civil society. Because what we have produced, I think, is a kind of a declaration of how civil society should act in the 21st century given the current social, political, economic and cultural context in which we find ourselves. It has concentrated the minds. It has brought us to some clear principles which will require a lot of courage to deliver. It has set up a process like this that has brought many different civil society actors together. We no longer talk about NGOs. We have the trade unions here. We have youth groups who have been involved in this. We have many, many who have been participating in this process. And we can go to Busan with a renewed sense of common purpose and energized to deliver on it. There are many in the international community who want to move on to the so-called new agenda. But this has been the curse of development. Commitments entered into and casually dropped as the next wave of the cycle comes along. And we have got to go to Busan and stand up and say, no, you asked us to do this, we have done it, this is our principle, this is our framework for delivering it, and we're not going away, and you'll be hearing from us. Thank you very much.